Big changes are on the way for DC's film lineup. Despite recently reprising his role as Superman in Black Adam, Henry Cavill is finally hanging up his cape and tights. Instead of returning to the Snyderverse, James Gunn has begun work on a Superman film starring a young Clark Kent who's just starting out at the Daily Planet. First up, the New 52 Action Comics. Now, we don't know if Gunn and fellow DC Studios CEO Peter Safran are planning a full reboot of DC's cinematic universe, but with Man of Steel, they're clearly starting over. Fortunately, there is plenty of material from which they can draw inspiration thanks to DC Comics, so let's look at some stories that would be perfect for the new Superman. The New 52-volume Action Comics is a return to Superman's Golden Age roots, as much as it is a fresh start for the character. Superman was originally envisioned by creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster as a crusading vigilante who spends as much time beating up corrupt landlords and abusive husbands as he does saving Metropolis from alien invasions or giant robots. Seeing a dark version of Clark doing vigilante stuff would make for a great movie, to be honest. As both a superhero and a rookie journalist, he's a bruiser in a homemade costume who fights hard for the ordinary men and women of Metropolis. Despite the fact that Clark gradually comes to terms with his heritage and evolves into a more traditional version of Superman by the end, the creators make an effort to portray him as a humble guy who simply does not tolerate bullies, whether they are criminals or extra-dimensional imps. It's also worth noting that Morrison's Action Comics, like Gunn's Superman film, re-examines Clark's early years after a major creative shakeup at DC. The series provides an intriguing case study on how to deal with and acknowledge the fact that DC's continuity has been significantly altered by larger forces. It's a meta comic in that sense, but it never gets bogged down in the hows and whys of DC's latest reboot. This series is about returning Superman to his roots in order to propel him forward once more. Up next, Year of the Comet. If you're wondering if Superman could be any better, we've got news for you. The Year of the Comet was featured in DC Comics Presents number 87. The plot introduced Superman Prime, a different version of the Man of Steel who appeared to be perfect in every way. He's even been depicted in bright gold as a symbol of strength and power. It's an intriguing idea that there is a more perfect Superman than the Clark Kent viewers are accustomed to seeing. Still, if DC were to pursue a story like this, it would ground the superhero in many ways, demonstrating his own relatable flaws that go beyond his inspirational quotes and good deeds. Coming up, Superman Secret Origin. Of course, Superman was once a teenager, and we wonder what antics he was up to then. Jeff Johns, like Morrison, is a writer who is hesitant to discard old characters and stories when they can still be useful. Superman Secret Origin is writer Jeff Johns and artist Gary Frank's attempt to write the definitive young Superman story, and it draws heavily on the hero's classic Silver Age adventures. Secret Origin deviated from many previous origin stories by reintroducing elements such as Clark's teenage adventures as Superboy and his friendship with the time-traveling Legion of Superheroes. It's also a series that deftly incorporates several of Superman's most notorious villains, including Lex Luthor, Metallo, and Parasite. Krypton is the only Superman trope that doesn't appear in this story, as Johns and Frank make a concerted effort to downplay Superman's home planet in favor of exploring his childhood in Smallville and early months in Metropolis. Following the Krypton-heavy approach of 2013's Man of Steel, that could be exactly what the new film needs to successfully reintroduce Superman to the big screen. Following up, Lois Lane. Until now, we have no movie that's given Lois a proper shout-out. Lois Lane was given a proper spotlight in her own miniseries, despite being a supporting character in most of Superman's titles. The Lois Lane run was crucial in shaping her worldview and launching her journalism career. The Man of Tomorrow is frequently viewed through the lens of Lois Lane, which could be an intriguing way into a new segment of the big screen franchise. Having Lane tell the story would finally give the character the credit she deserves, while also altering the pace of the Kryptonian's journey. Moving on, Superman Birthright. Superman Birthright was DC's first Superman origin story published after the Smallville TV series debuted. Smallville's influence is palpable in this retelling, especially in its emphasis on the unlikely friendship between a young Clark Kent and a reclusive genius, Lex Luthor. Luthor. And while we'd love to see the Clark-Lex friendship continue in Gunn's revamped DCU, that's not why we're focusing on Birthright. Birthright, a collaboration between writer Mark Waid and artist Leinil Yu, focuses on a 20-something Clark as he hones his journalistic skills and first appears as a costume hero in Metropolis. Clark is covering a civil war in West Africa in the first few chapters. There, he struggles with the realization that superhuman strength and a gift with words aren't always enough to affect long-term change. Birthright is a rare Superman story that emphasizes Clark Kent the journalist as much as Kal-El the superhero. It serves as a reminder that Clark is more than just a front for an all-powerful alien. It also demonstrates that Superman can and should be a hero for all people, not just metropolitans. Next up, Dark Knight's Death Metal. Dark Knights was primarily a Batman-influenced story, which makes it seem out of place in a Superman film. Death Metal, on the other hand, demonstrated that the dark multiverse was dangerous to every hero, including Clark Kent. Superman battled various evil versions of himself, each corrupted by a familiar character trait that audiences would have recognized in the original hero. In many ways, it's a character study, fueled by a multiversal threat worthy of cinema. Coming up, Superman Secret Identity. Superman Secret Identity by Kurt Busiek and Stuart Immonen may be the best Superman comic not set in the DC universe. Clark Kent in this limited series lives in a world where there are no superhumans, and get this, Superman is only a comic book character in the comic book. Imagine Clark's surprise when he begins to manifest the variabilities of his namesake. Secret Identity is an unusually grounded Superman story, as Clark is more concerned with protecting his identity from prying journalists and military operatives than with battling supervillains. Much more adult than battling it out, you see, but the character's humanity and desire to do good with the gifts he's been given are highlighted by Busiek and Immonen's low-key approach. We're not suggesting that Gunn set his film universe in a world where Superman is the only costumed hero, but Secret Identity is a fantastic example of how to humanize such a larger-than-life character. Following up, Superman Year One. On the other hand, Superman Year One by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. depicts Superman as anything but ordinary. In this series, Clark Kent was so powerful that he's effectively an untouchable god among paper-thin mortals. Ironically, while Miller is credited with popularizing the notion of Batman being skilled enough to defeat Superman in direct combat, Year One demonstrates that the Man of Steel was only ever amusing the Dark Knight. But it should be noted that Year One is a problematic origin story, with the first issue alone introducing contentious elements such as Lana Lang's attempted rape and Clark joining the military after high school. Plus, the series provides a unique and valuable look at Superman's psychological development. Many superhero fans believe that Superman is too powerful to be a truly interesting protagonist, and that's where this comic succeeds. Year One shows that invulnerability does not have to be an impediment to compelling drama, which is something DC is sorely lacking. Next up, if DC isn't restoring the Snyderverse, it needs to properly end it. Yes, there are numerous options for James Gunn to choose from when he decides to bring back Superman. He may just come up with an original story as well, something he's quite good at when he reintroduces his version of DC. But before this new era is ushered in, the DCU must bring the Snyderverse to a close. The DCU has been through a whirlwind of behind-the-scenes drama, most notably during the reshoots for the 2017 version of Justice League. Despite the fact that Zack Snyder's original version of the film was eventually released in 2021 as Zack Snyder's Justice League after a massive fan campaign, DC's problems have persisted. This eventually led to the shocking announcement that Henry Cavill would be leaving his role as Superman when he had only recently returned to the role in Black Adam. Plus, Dwayne Johnson made his return seem like something that would last. Cavill's departure appears to indicate that DC Studios, led by both James Gunn and Peter Safran, is looking for a completely new start for the DC universe. While this would be a sad end to the DC universe as it began with Man of Steel, DC Studios can make the transition from one cinematic universe to another more seamless. In a nutshell, if DC Studios chooses to restart, the Snyderverse can and should take its final bow. Last but not least, Superman is DC Studios' major priority going forward. But while DC's revival is still in the works, writer and director James Gunn recently stated that Superman will remain a top priority in the future. Following the merger of Warner Media and Discover Inc. in April, DC Films underwent a major restructuring that resulted in the cancellation of several major projects, including the nearly completed Batgirl film, in which Michael Keaton would have reprised his role as Batman. But Gunn took to social media to reassure his followers that DC Studios will continue to prioritize Superman. Though Man of Steel 2 was announced, it was later revealed that the film was never greenlit after a pitch was rejected. But it is time to put all past disappointments to rest. Gunn and Safran are on their way to making DC into a franchise worth remembering, and if they can manage to do that, fans will finally be able to enjoy their favorite characters on the screen again, albeit portrayed by different actors. And that's really not all that bad, right? Do you believe any of these comics could be chosen by Gunn to bring to the big screens? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.